Okay, hello everyone. My name is Paulina, and I'm a software engineer and leader of two teams at a Polish educational company, Odrabiamy. But yeah, enough about me, let's focus on you guys. I'm really happy you're still here with me after the busy 2 days, and even though we're a little bit tight on schedule. But please bear with me a little bit more, because today we will talk about deadlines. Or maybe I should rather say deadlines, because no one has ever died without meeting one, have they? And yet, the word is indeed very powerful, and when we work on our projects, we really want to deliver them on time, even though sometimes it might mean we take some shortcuts or make some sacrifices. But when we do, does it always mean that our project has been successful? During my presentation, I would like to share with you some case studies, some scenarios during which the project was delivered on time, but not without problems. We will identify what happened, the shortcuts taken. We will try to look for the problems during the development. And then, afterwards, we will move on to some solutions, some methods that could have been used to avoid such situations and make sure the whole project, not only its end, is a success. So let's begin with the case studies, but before we do that, let's meet our team. So our team consists of the kind Kimberly, who is our regular developer, the unamused Andrew, our senior developer. We also have the happy Henry, our junior dev. There is also the all-seeing Alex, yeah, he has 3 eyes, he sees everything, who is our quality assurance. We also have our party Patricia, our designer. There is also the motivating Monica, our project manager, and finally our client, the impatient Ian. So let's start with the case studies. Now, the first case study is the case of personal sacrifices. Imagine a scenario that Ian comes to our team and says, I need a nice web page. And Monica says, of course, Ian, we will do it for you. She gives the request to Patricia, who prepares the design. The design goes to the developers who start working on it. And at this point, we only have Andrew and Kim working on the team. So they start working, but sometime later, they are joined by Henry, who is our fresh junior dev. And of course, he needs to be onboarded. So Kim is assigned the task. She starts introducing him to the code base, to the repository and stuff, explaining things to him. And of course, this already means the project gets a little bit delayed. So the deadline is on Wednesday, and on Monday, our team is still working, especially Andrew, who has a lot on his shoulders. And on Monday, he opens a PR late towards the evening, and the next day is a bank holiday. It's a day off. But the code has to be reviewed, doesn't it? So Kim and Henry spend a little bit of time reviewing the code and also finishing their stuff, and then it goes to Alex on Wednesday, the day of the deadline. And of course, this is fine, yeah? Alex is on fire. All the pressure is on him. He feels that he has to turn a blind eye on some of the bugs. So eventually, he finishes the project. It's done on time. But when there is the party to celebrate the project, guess who goes? Ian. Kim doesn't go. She isn't happy because she wanted to spend the day with her kid, take him to the cinema or whatever. Henry is unhappy because the stress was so hard to bear, and it's his new company. He's afraid that every project would look like that, and he doesn't want to work in such a company. Andrew is unhappy because basically almost everything was on his shoulders again. Alex is unhappy because he was the last chain link, and the pressure was very much on him on the day of the deadline. Monica is unhappy because she feels her team is demotivated and she's not really sure they will be able to deliver another project. And Patricia doesn't go because no one else goes. The cost here is, of course, work-life balance. So people devote their personal time. They don't spend time with their families. They really work long hours. They also might be demotivated because of that. And of course, this is not that obvious, but the relationships between people in the team can get worsened because, for example, Alex, he might feel that others did not respect his time and his work because he was put under severe pressure. And, of course, well-being of people who worked a lot. The next case is the case of the post-crunch bolognese. Now, this case is quite similar to the previous one, except for the fact that Ian needs a little bit more sophisticated web page. Again, he comes to Monica, Monica passes the request to Patricia, Patricia prepares the design, the design goes to the developers, and they start brainstorming because this is a little bit more complex, so they need to spend a little bit more time focusing on the tech planning. Eventually, they of course start coding, but at some point, Andrew doesn't feel very well, and he has to take several days off. So we end up with Kim and Henry working on the project, and they lack the guidance of a senior dev, and the deadline is already looming somewhere there on the horizon. Eventually, Andrew gets back, but they're already tight on schedule, so there's not really much time for refactoring, for code reviewing. They need to get the thing done. So they focus on a working feature. It goes to Alex. Alex tests it. It's fine. And it's done. But what we get afterwards is just spaghetti code. Now, here in this scenario, I think Ian, of course, goes to the party. Alex as well. Patricia, yeah, someone's going. I'm going too. Monica, yes, but the whole dev team is like, hey, we didn't do a great job. The code base is like really messy now. We don't want to work with it anymore. The cost here is, of course, tech debt. And it might be a little bit more tangible. Like, for example, the code might be written in a way that it might cause some performance issues. But it can also be more intangible. Like, for example, it might be just written in a very messy way so that maintaining it later on and doing something, I don't know, reading, changing the code, just will take more time. It might also be necessary to do some post-release refactoring. And our dev team is just demotivated because they feel they could have done some better work. The third case is the case of lost orphans. Now, this case is a little bit different because our team is busy working on something, but then there's this most important client of all who comes to a different team, let's call them the VIP team, and he requests some feature to be done. And of course, our VIP team says, yeah, we'll do it, but they feel they need some additional resources, so they ask Andrew, Patricia, and Alex for help. And our team is like, hey, but how are we supposed to finish our project now? And of course, the VIP team does their job and finishes their project on time, but our team is really struggling hard to get their projects done. They do it eventually, but they have many blockers on the way because they don't have designs because Patricia is busy. They have trouble finding code reviewers because Andrew is busy. And also they can't get their things tested because Alex is busy. So their deadline is endangered. And in this case, of course, the VIP team goes to the party and our team doesn't really know there is a party. The cost here is, of course, like meeting the deadline of one project might mean that other deadlines, other projects are endangered. This, of course, influences the roadmap itself. Sometimes it has to be changed, postponed a little bit, and such changes might cause instability in people, and those who have to change teams have to change contexts, which also might be difficult for some. And finally, our last case, which is quite popular, the case of total confusion. Now, imagine Ian coming to our team and saying, I need this. And he says, I need it in 2 months. And Monica says, oh God, 2 months, it's really short time, so let's do it quickly. She takes the like, she thinks, okay, he needs a swing, I'll give it to Patricia. Patricia prepares a design, she designs this, it goes to the developers, they start working, they get the product tested by Alex. Alex accepts it, it's done, but when it's done, it looks totally different. And when Ian looks at it, he's like, hey, but I really needed just a way to swing from a tree. What happened here is that Ian said he needs the swing get in 2 months, and Monica felt it's really short time. So she didn't actually spend any time asking questions, when in fact, if she asked, she would realize that what we actually need is just a tire and a rope. And the developers would spend much less time than 2 months working on it, because it was just simpler than expected. There's no party at all, of course, because nothing, like the product we get is totally different from what we needed. And the cost here is, of course, money and time. We spend a lot working on something that's completely useless, and because of that, our team is totally demotivated. Now, all of these scenarios show that deadlines can be met, but sometimes there is hidden cost. And in such cases, celebrating the success is not that obvious or enjoyable. But what can be really done about it? Now, what I will tell you now is really subjective, and it's definitely not a complete list, but it's something that we at my company use to navigate through our projects and be proud of like every step of the projects we do. It's also all related to project management, or most of all, it's related to project management. And you would probably ask, hey, but why are you telling devs about project management? And it's because I feel that it's crucial that we get at least the basics of project management, so that we can also suggest good practices, take active part in the project from its very beginning. And if you're not invited, get yourself invited so that you can advise, you can share your opinions. So the first thing, which I think is the most important, is to understand the problem. And I really mean understand the problem. Because it often happens that the client comes to you with a solution, just like in the case of the swing. And if you don't understand the real business need, you might actually end up developing the solution when in fact there was something that could have been done that was much, much simpler. So like clarification is key, and also if you understand the real business need, it then helps you make smaller decisions along the way. If you have any doubts, I don't know, later during the project, during the development, it's just like this basic understanding is your guidance. So once you have your project, you have to prioritize it. And like the most basic way to prioritize projects is to use the prioritization matrix with the vertical axis of impact and the horizontal axis of effort, where if you have projects that take like a lot of effort but have high impact, they are worth doing, but they have to be planned really carefully because they just take time. But if you have those that also have high impact but require less effort, they are surely like easier to prioritize first because they just bring quicker gains. If there's something that requires higher effort and has low impact, it's just probably not worth doing. And if there are projects with low impact and low effort, they are probably worth considering for some less busy days or like doing in the meantime. So this is all like to avoid situations when priorities clash. And when you have your priorities set, you should identify at the very beginning all the resources you need to finish your project. So developers, designers, whoever you might need, and then put them on a roadmap. And at my company, we use usually Gantt charts to visualize roadmaps. And this one is quite nice because with the yellow markers, yellow lines, you can see when the roadmap begins and ends. With the red, the red line marks the current point in time. And you can see that by that time we should have finished some of the projects, and we haven't, because the projects that got finished are marked with the green check marks. There is also the project Phoenix 3.0, which can be expanded to show that different teams are involved in it. So imagine that there is a similar chart for a different team in the company where the UX UI team is busy at the same point in time. So we would clearly see that it's probably a blocker. Yeah, so once you have your projects, I would tell you to set yourself a deadline. And you might say, wait, what? And yeah, because some projects might have strict deadlines that are really non-negotiable. Like in our case, it's usually, since we are an educational company, it's usually September, because this is when the school year in Poland begins, so most crucial projects should be finished by that date. But sometimes you might have projects which do not have that clear deadlines, and then you should self yourself one. Why? Because deadlines help you stay motivated and focused. You know that you work towards some goal, you want to achieve that goal, you see it on the horizon, so you focus on doing that. And sometimes you might get projects that take a real long time, and then it's very useful dividing them into smaller pieces, each with their own deadline, so that you always have this feeling of accomplishment when you finish something. It also helps you to stay efficient and productive because, of course, you know what you have to do, so you don't overthink, over-engineer, you stay focused. It helps with project planning and budget management. And imagine not having a deadline and some client coming to you saying, could you please squeeze in this little feature for me? And you would say, yeah, of course, I will do that. But if you have a deadline, you would have to say, okay, I will do it, but I have to postpone my deadline. This requires effort, and it's not that easy. Now you have a project, and now what? Now the tech part begins, the fun part. I think that every project, even smaller ones, require a tech lead. This should be a person who has ownership of the whole project and has like very high level vision of what happens, so they can identify blockers, dependencies between tasks, because developers, when they start working on the tasks, usually focus on the tasks only, and the tech lead always sees it as a whole. It's also a person who is a point of contact for anyone who might have any questions, be it designers who might ask if something is easy to do or not, be it any other dev from another team that might ask how the project influences their code base. And it's useful if it's the same person, because there is consistency then in the answers. It has to be someone from the team, of course, but it should not be the team lead all the time. Every team member should have a chance to lead a project of their own. It's a person who prepares tasks, but it's not the one who is responsible for all of them. It's the work of the whole team. If you have a project with a strict deadline, limit the scope. And of course, I'm talking about the MVP, minimum viable product. So you have to focus on something that works, but really works. You have to identify how the scope in which the product will still be useful for our users. So you can actually apply the prioritization matrix for individual features. Like, for example, you would say, you would have an animation on your website that would require a huge amount of effort, but really have little impact. So we would probably deprioritize it for post-MVP to see if it's really necessary. And at that point, you should also plan the post-MVP phase, because MVP still means minimum. So it's really crucial that you, after doing this, you move on to the next phase. It can happen a little bit after the deadline, so that we could analyze user behavior and validate our hypotheses, but it has to be planned. Now, plan your tasks and tech work. So write the tasks, visualize dependencies between them and identify any doubts you might have. This one, the last one, is very, very important because sometimes when you estimate your tasks, some of them are really like very easy, or like you don't have any doubts, they're very clear. So it's like, okay, it will take, even if it will take a long time, you know what has to be done. But sometimes you feel that there's this red light shining somewhere, and you know that there's something wrong, you are not really sure what will happen if you start working on a task. So these ones have to be prioritized. And I will give you an example because at Odrabiamy, we once had a huge project, really long one, that we divided into, I think, 6 stages. And one of the tasks was to move a huge amount of data from one database column to another. And we knew that we haven't done such a thing like in the past. So we felt that it might be risky. And we prioritized it to the beginning of the project. And it turned out to be a really good decision because in the end, it took us a month to finish the task. It was because our staging environment was much less performant than production, and we had to tweak the code, optimize the environment, and then test it, and it really took a long time. And if we postpone it towards the end of the project, we would just get the deadline delayed by 1 month. So this is also a way in which we visualize our tasks. We put it in Miroboard, like links to Jira, and immediately get some small previews. And here you can see that apart from the nice to have refactor column, there are 5 tasks that are individual, and one of them, the third one, blocks another 3, out of which 2 are also blockers. So it would be clear that you have to start with the third one because it's the most crucial to get later on all the job done. And document. I know. It's not our most enjoyable thing to do, but it's very important because if you have to write something, it helps you think in a really straight, analytical way where you don't really have any space for gaps. You have to like continue the line of writing. So if there's any doubt you might have, you have to address it. And of course, it's also a source of information for the future or during the project itself. And communicate. If there are any risks emerging during your process, during your project, say it out loud. This was the case of Andrew going on a sick leave. You risk nothing speaking about problems you might encounter, and you actually might gain, I don't know, you might get help of others, you might get the deadline postponed a little bit. So it's always crucial to speak, because also in such a way you build trust. And plan the aftermath. This is also very important because we sometimes feel that, okay, the deadline is met, it's done. But actually, oftentimes, we have to clean up. We have to remove some feature flags, refactor. There's some work that still needs to get done. And this has to be really communicated to the stakeholders that the cleanup phase is also a part of the project, even though it might happen after the deadline. You can also analyze the user behavior to see if your hypotheses were met or not, to validate them, and if you limited your scope, this is a moment for the post-MVP phase. And celebrate. This is also crucial. Yeah, celebrate your successes, especially if the whole project was led very seamlessly. And before I let you go, I would like you to remember that satisfaction comes with a job well done, and it's not difficult to burn yourself and others out. It's not difficult to procrastinate and always finish your projects right before the deadline. It's difficult to actually plan them in such a way that you can be proud of every step you took. And coding is not the most important. Actually, what is the most important is building simple solutions to problems. And the code you write is the code you have to maintain. So I know, but this is also what differentiates us from AI, isn't it? We just like answer our clients' problems, not really just write meaningless code. So with this, we're reaching the deadline of the conference and also my talk. So thank you very much and have a nice evening.